We're recording this conversation in November 2021. A year from now, the world changes.
Making ISO 222 work. Now there's a lot to think about, right? And as we progress today, we're going to talk a bit about various elements about making it work, including how to implement, how to store, how to monetize. But before we do that, I think it's important to touch a bit about some of the basics, which is, as a bank or as a corporate, do you really understand it, right? Because I'd say unless you understand what the model represents, what the data language even looks like, how are you going to really leverage it? How are you going to extract any value out of ISO 222? And from that standpoint, I'm seeing a big gap in the market in terms of the skills available. And I know in general, the UK's got a skill shortage, right, from lorry drivers to healthcare to payments expertise. But I'm seeing a big gap almost globally in terms of that expertise level required in ISO 222, not to just comply, but to really make it work. Comments on that, please, Andrew?
Oh, you're absolutely right. I mean, if we just look for a few seconds at the scale of the change that is coming to the world of banking and payments in particular as a result of ISO 20022, it's actually frightening. 11,000 financial institutions in more than 200 countries around the world. That's just the correspondent banking network affected by the swift transition to ISO 20022. Add to that all of the domestic institutions that are attached to domestic payment systems. There are nearly 8,000 of those in the United States of America alone who are on their own path towards implementation of ISO 20022. Many of those domestic institutions, of course, are not part of the international correspondent banking network. Then there's the corporates. This is an enormous change. And actually, as you say, there's an enormous shortage of skills in this area. ISO 20022 is a whole new language. Every single piece of business terminology in the old Swift MT world changes. Every single one. And it's not just the names of the fields or the field elements that change. The business process of moving money from one place to another is also changing in front of our very eyes. So irrespective of which layer of architecture you look at, the move towards ISO 20022 imposes the requirement for new skills and certainly new understanding at every single level and in every position of an organisation whose business has anything to do with the movement of money. That is terrifying. There are, of course, good reasons for optimism as well. We're doing this for good reasons, as we said in our last conversation. So there's an upside, there's a prize to go after here. And it is also true that just as our payment systems today are based on logic that was designed probably in the 1970s and 1980s, long since forgotten by today's engineers, but those systems safely conduct a lot of the business of payments today. It is also true that you can certainly, to an extent, productize your necessary language skills by acquiring systems and updates to systems that speak ISO 20022 natively so that you don't have to. None of this is free, but at least it does get you a certain distance towards those all-important finishing lines in the summer of 2022, in November of 2022, and in November of 2025, by which time the banking world needs to be speaking ISO 20022 like a native across multiple different payments channels. So yes, there is a huge shortage of skills. Let's not gloss over that. But there are things that you can do to an extent to help you get to those finishing lines faster than might actually seem to be the case. But you do some work on the implementation side of things as well. Perhaps I could ask the same question to you.
No, absolutely. And I'd say as a vendor who works in the space, and we have a platform that is by default one side is ISO 20022. So yeah, so I agree. So tools can help a lot, and we are part of the ecosystem. We're a Swift listed vendor. And we make things much easier. So with Fiorano, it's easy to implement, non-disruptive. But the point is, that's compliance, right? And yes, we can help you comply quickly. But like we discussed earlier, the value in ISO 232 is not to just comply. It's what can you leverage out of it. And for that to happen, you as a bank or as a corporate have to absolutely understand it. So the reality is, unfortunately, globally, and I'm seeing this from Hong Kong to Africa to UK to America, which is slightly not on the same trajectory we're on, but there is absolutely a skill shortage, and that is a problem. And I know that's a space that you as Interception work in, and we're all partners, but it is a problem area.